Patch 10.2 launches a little over 2 weeks from now and follows Blizzcon in hopes of being a period of WoW's biggest and most important periods in its history, unless they screw it all up. Hey, it's Soul, and welcome to Warcraft Weekly, your place for feel-good, copium-filled commentary. You can help with the channel by smashing that like button, subscribing for more WoW coverage, and catching me live on Twitch or wherever, now that Twitch is allowing folks to stream on multiple platforms. So the patch speculation is over, and as it turns out, WoW is continuing its very safe but very strict approach with 10.2 launching November 7th, just after BlizzCon weekend. We can look back on the original roadmap released early this year, and while Dragonflight has not been perfect in the eyes of many, big kudos to the WoW team for following through with this roadmap. We can't deny that the team planned and worked its ass off to commit to this. My next question is going to be answered in the coming weeks, but I'm going to bring it up now. What's going to happen next year? We've gotten all the indicators that Dragonflight 10.2 could be the final raid patch of this expansion, and the takes have been really mixed over the idea of another quote short expansion. Of course, there's also an abundance of impatience from folks wanting to hurry along to the next big story, the next big raid, the next expansion. At some point, I'm going to give a big old predictions kind of video just before BlizzCon, but one line I'm going to bring up today: we're probably going to get a full 2024 roadmap during BlizzCon, featuring a high-level overview of the end of Dragonflight and maybe even the start of WoW's next expansion. And we'll be able to easily speculate when everything's happening if it's not if it's not immediately revealed to us. I feel like in hindsight, 2023 has proven that the WoW team is confident that it can produce. There's always the question of whether we like what is being produced, but for now, I'm going to stick to this roadmap thing. It is one of the best things the devs have done to communicate to players what's ahead, and despite that, I'm not gonna shut up about what's happening next. I'm obsessed with it, no lie, and I'm not sorry, but I am at least gonna move on to the next thing. With 10.2 getting closer and closer, I want to point out a few recent changes to update some of my initial findings and reports. One big set of changes is going to affect players who care about gear as well as the profession economy. Earlier, we reported that there would be a 6 item level difference between crafted gear and other gear that could be upgraded. Folks were kind of devastated, but then they took a big old hit of copium and they moved on. But as it turns out, that gap is narrowing a bit, and now the best crafted gear is only 3 item level lower than fully upgraded gear. Now, this is going to keep crafted gear at a very competitive level. It might not be the best piece for a given slot, but it's in a much better place, and professions will continue to thrive, depending on your server, of course. A bit of bad news though: the number of aspect crests needed to make top-end gear, it's going up, although actually it's just been lower on the PTR up until now. In actuality, the number of raid bosses or dungeon runs that you need isn't going to change from Season 2. A lot of this info is available on a spreadsheet that I made for Season 3, a link to that is in the description, and of course you're free to save a copy for yourself. For the raiders in the back over there, tier drop rates are going to change. In the previous season, it was pretty much guaranteed that at least 1 tier token would drop per boss kill, with a higher chance of more depending on the number of players. Now that rate is being kind of chopped in half almost, where in a 10-man group there's only now a 50% chance that tier will drop. Of course, this doesn't mean that there's less loot, it's just that non-tier pieces are more likely to drop, namely weapons and trinkets and accessories. At first this sounds bad, it's like, hey, there's fewer pieces being passed around, but here's a reminder about tier. The Revival Catalyst is going to open up week 1 of the season with a charge coming in every 2 weeks. So think of it this way: if in a given week, even if no tier were to drop for a whole 10-man team, anyone who received pieces eligible for the Catalyst will be able to get tier through conversion. And it's a logical conclusion that anyone who is using the Catalyst in the first month or two, they're going to be using it to complete their set bonuses. The main reason why I like this personally is because even early in the season, my team had plenty of situations where a token would drop and no one would need them. It made that boss kill feel pretty empty. Now let's also not forget that there are other sources of tier like the Great Vault and the Season 3 Master Achievement for early achievers. That's going to award that Omni token that can be traded for any piece. Real talk though, the conversation about getting tier has been exhausting for me. We've been doing it for years and years, just not when tier wasn't around. People want their set bonuses yesterday, and there's never been a tier or a season where people were happy with the way sets were handled because it's always subject to RNG. These days we can see that Dragonflight has gone a long way with ensuring that people get their pieces in a timely manner, but critics keep pushing the goalpost back. They want it sooner and sooner, and it's starting to get kind of ridiculous at this point. I'm gonna go as far to suggest, and hear me out because I know I'm gonna get pushback, instead of earning tier set bonuses attached to gear, just give us a seasonal borrowed power thing that everyone gets day one, and then give us some grind to make that power cooler or better. And then during the next preseason, we immediately switch to the next thing and we start the process of powering that up. Now it sounds stupid, right? Yes, it's ludicrous. There's no way that Blizzard would just give us a power to throw on. So as a reminder, also coming this season, or at least it hasn't been removed yet, there's this special head enchant that we can eventually earn by completing the raid over a period of weeks. The enchant isn't super unique. There's one for each major role: tank, healer, melee, and ranged DPS, but they are powerful. They're equivalent to like a decent trinket or a set bonus minus the transformative nature. I have a feeling that this enchant is an experiment of sorts. Like, what if this enchant works out? And in future seasons, we just see all specializations getting this special enchant, that is unique for that season, but it only works if you're using mostly gear from that season. Gear is being very clearly labeled, so that hook is kind of halfway there. And this will mean in the potential future, there's no more drama over who gets what token. There's no need for the revival catalyst, although I still want it for transmog. Everyone just gets their power, pretty much. It sounds kind of cool, but it sounds kind of unexciting too. I feel like we lose some of that rough edge that comes with WoW being a social game. It's supposed to be a social game, I think. But with the constant polishing and repolishing of tier distribution and people complaining anyway, maybe that's the direction we're moving, like it or not. I've been saying this about borrowed power, and I'm saying this about tier distribution and this push for account-wide progression. This campaign for accessibility that I know comes from a good place, it might have unintended consequences. Not all of them are going to make people happy. Speaking of loot, you know how there's that very rare loot that can drop from raids? That's going to have a small change too. In the upcoming raid, if very rare loot drops, it's no longer going to replace something that would have otherwise appeared on the loot table. So like in a 10-man group where 2 pieces drop from a boss, if very rare loot appears, that's going to mean a total of 3 pieces drop. It's a straight up buff that everyone ought to be happy about. Blizzard wants you to fail at raids. I'm hella kidding, but that's what some folks' reactions were when news broke that more abilities in the upcoming raid would be behind what are called private auras. Since I don't spoil myself with raid encounters, I can only broadly say that there are going to be certain abilities in the raid that'll require good communication between raid members, but they won't be able to rely on add-ons like weak auras to just direct them where to go and how to do it. Now this is different from simply tracking like who has a debuff or when an ability is going to happen. The worry among mid to top end players is that encounters may become needlessly punishing. On the flip side though, the WoW team has effectively put a stop to the weak aura arms race, and will hopefully expect encounter mechanics designed around that aren't so wild that people feel dependent on weak auras to manage them. Now as for these hopeful improvements, I'm talking about the WoW team adding better visual indicators like player go here, this is your personal arrow, don't mess it up, or more forgiving timers so the humans can communicate and process and react, and I'm sure there are other methods. I think ideally we may get to a place where the most useful encounter add-ons are limited to just timers, and the actual dance is a puzzle that can be managed with practice and good play. That is going to be the show. I just wanted to keep you up to date with like the latest of what there is to expect from the upcoming patch. There are other pieces of 10.2, notably the outdoor content loop in the Emerald Dream, that seem to be in the middle of changes. Like just the other day, I was trying to do a practical test of how the zone felt, but I was stopped pretty quickly because a critical currency and even one of the prize bags from planting them seeds, it didn't seem to drop. Now from a bug reporting standpoint, okay, yeah, it's not a big deal, this can easily be fixed. From a, hey, I want to give people a preview and my impressions, bigger deal. Okay, so from this gigantic dreamy bounty and pumping 500 of that do stuff in there, I got the equivalent of what, like 25 gold. It's dope. Once things get together, I hope to share my findings, reassurance, maybe just a little bit of doomspeak. Next week ought to be fun. I'm gonna have my unfamous survival guide parody out at some point, and we'll start hyping up for BlizzCon with predictions, we'll make up bingo cards and more, so stay tuned to this channel for updates. Like the video, subscribe for more coverage, catch me live, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.